awaited Encaustic Studio Tour is here. But first, we have to back up a few hundred feet. Hi there, I'm Stacy, the Encaustic mixed media artist behind Studio Stacy. Encaustic literally means to burn in. So I paint with beeswax and a torch, and because it's mixed media, pretty much anything else I can get my hands on. If you're new around here, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Consider subscribing and joining this artsy community. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, which helps me get introduced to more like-minded artsy folks like yourself. Okay, so now that you know a little bit about me, let's walk over to the studio. My studio is a separate building on our property. It's a short walk from our barn dominium home. The studio is situated right along a creek, and the porch is a great place to sit, relax, have a beverage, and watch the wildlife. This space was a rustic woodworking shop before we converted it into my studio. If you're interested in seeing the woodworking shed to studio conversion, I will link it up top here. Getting back to the studio tour, let's pop inside. Welcome to my studio in wild and wonderful West Virginia. Because I walk over here every day, I needed an area to drop my boots and muddy shoes.
The previous owner had these wood shutters that cover the windows, and I love them. It's kind of a ritual every day to close them up and every morning to open them up. So I thought I would give you a quick overview of the entire space before I start the tour. So up first, this is where you first walk in, and then just kind of panning around the studio, you'll see the work table, my desks, some rolling carts, and more of my work table, just to give you a quick overview and understanding of how the studio is laid out.
In this area, I'm envisioning a welcome space for open studio time, perhaps once a month, or maybe even farther into the future, a space to have Airbnb guests come in and see the studio. Those are pretty far down the line future dreams, so getting back to present day time. Right now, this space holds what I call my wet media area.
In these drawers, I have my watercolor and tools that I use with watercolor, such as watercolor brushes and my watercolor palette. And then panning down below this area, you'll see I have more water media and some Inktense blocks.
This area also houses my vintage area, vintage items things like old poles and fasteners, some puzzle pieces and games, of course, alterable items. And even farther down below, we have some vintage books. On top of both of these cabinets, I have various different artworks from other artists and of course some treasures that are extra special to me. on to the opposite side of this space, you will see my large work table. And on this side of the work table is storage, and I house things that I don't use on a regular basis. Things like hand-dyed fabric, lace and fabric that I could potentially dye, punches and miscellaneous tools, metalsmithing, stuff to dye fabric paper with, and also paper making supplies. And last but not least, stencils, wood pieces, and more vintage books. Coming around my work table, I house things that I use on a more daily basis and frequently while I'm creating, because this is my work area that I use when I create. Things like extra encaustic medium, beeswax, Damar resin, extra foam brushes, and of course my earth pigments, which I use to make my encaustic paint with. I also have extra tools here, and tools that I use a lot with encaustic. Things like a heat gun, because I don't always use a torch. Also, different sizes of torches. And just because you never know when you need one more torch, another torch. And then also various other tools, like a heat iron, another heat iron, and a wood burning tool. Matt actually made me this handy little rolling cart, which I don't roll around that often, but it houses all of my encaustic paint in these handy little trays, which I can then just put right up here as I'm working, open them up, and get out whatever paint color I want. On this same side of my work table, I have my large map drawers, and believe me, they were not in always this nice of shape. We refurbished them. But they house things like cutting boards, large paper pads, sketches, more paper, and some of these are handmade papers. Even more paper. Some random fabrics. More paper. And some map board.
Hey Stacy,
Yes, Matt?
do you have any maps in those map drawers?
No maps.
Huh.
Those are coming up. Moving to the top of my work table, here is where I do all my painting. So of course I have my griddles, my torch, and then this recently installed pegboard, which houses all of my encaustic brushes and most of my tools. Now, speaking of tools and encaustic supplies, I am going to be releasing a private video to my newsletter subscribers only, along with a list of my favorite encaustic basic tools. So if you're interested in that and you're not signed up for my newsletter, I'll put a link down below in the description box so you can sign up. If you're already signed up for my newsletter that I send out typically once a month, don't worry, you will be automatically getting that. You don't have to re-sign up for it, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be coming out in a week, maybe two. One last area on top of my work table, and this is where I house a lot of mixed media supplies that I use with encaustic. Things like Derwent pencils, Stabilo crayons, Neocolor 2 crayons, of course, who doesn't need another heat gun, and some more colored pencils. Hopefully you're still sticking with me here. I have three more areas to go through in the studio. This is my rolling cart area. In this first rolling cart, I have actually handmade, hand sewn this fabric paint holder. And then this cart houses dried natural materials, things like seeds and flowers. Onto the next cart, this one has hand-dyed collage papers and more vintage collage items, along with some glue. This next cart is my main supply, encaustic supplies, because who can't have more encaustic tools? Extra paintbrushes, pencils, tar, things like that. And then this last rolling cart has more collage materials and another hand-sewn, handmade paintbrush holder. And don't forget those maps that Matt asked about earlier. Directly above these rolling carts is a bunch of floating shelves. These house, again, more encaustic supplies and my art journals. I have 2 shelves for a vintage lace, ribbon, twine, things like that. And then a couple shelves for some art journals, some current art journals, and some journals that are not so current, finished journals. India ink. This India ink is my favorite ink to use with encaustic. And some pastels also on that shelf that I use pretty frequently. Some more art journals and more encaustic supplies, some fabric, and again, more art journals. This area may not quite be as exciting as the rest of the studio, but it is just as necessary. This is where I have my computer, my printer, business books, art show supplies, and a lot of Studio Stacy business items. This is where I also edit videos and create the newsletters. So kind of the necessary part of Studio Stacy business. And there you have it. That concludes the studio tour. I said heat gun for this, didn't I?
Yep. Got the glamour shot. You got the fan going, the hair going.
This area,
This area what?
because I walk over here every day, I needed an area for a boot drop my...
Cut. No, don't cut. Keep rolling, folks. Rolling on the set.
Hope you enjoyed it. If you do, you know what to do. Give it a great big thumbs up. If you have any questions at all for me, leave them down below in the comments. Happy to answer anything and all questions that I can. Again, thanks so very, very, very much for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.